Good evening, family. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. My name and my problem is Henry. And let me tell you a little bit about Henry, first of all. And hopefully I'll get into the good stuff, my recovery. I, uh, I was born in Dominican Republic, so English is my second language. My parents migrated to New York. My mother came first in 1954, and then my dad came in 1956. I'm the middle of three boys. I have a brother, Raphael, who changed his name to Ray so it could be more Americanized, and myself, Henry, and then my younger brother, Fred. Um, I've always felt, uh, like the third wheel. My brother, who was the oldest, had a little heart murmur, so he was always pampered and got all the attentions. And my younger brother, being the baby of the family, was all cuddled and loved, and I was like always left out on left field. Those were just my feelings, and those are my thoughts. I recall when, early years, my mother took us to a tailor because we were doing our first Holy Communion, and we needed suits. And my brother got the nice tight tweed cloth, and I got the loose one. And I was disappointed again, but that's life. When I was a child, my mother tried to, I should say, try to discipline me. I used to be, when we used to she used to dress us up. This is when I was about 2 years old. She used to dress us up to take us to Sunday's church. And one of the faucets the faucet in the bathroom shower dripped. And I was constantly forever going in there and enjoying the drips. My mother got frustrated and filled the tub up with water and proceeded to discipline me and dunk my head underwater several times and until I had enough. So today, because of that, I have aquaphobia. You know, I enjoy the beach, but I don't go in past my waist. Um, Fast forwarding, my parents were very hard worker. We came here. I came over in January 6, 1956, and that's part of my email address. AT&T gave that to me. I came over in 1956, and by 1958, my parents already owned their own business, and they owned a two-story home in the Bronx, over across the street from Monroe High School, where Ed Kranepool used to play and practice. Ed Kranepool was the first baseman for the uh, Mets, and I used to go out there and catch the balls when he hit them to the outfield. Um, in high school, no, in junior high school, I was voted most likely to succeed. In high school, I lettered in baseball, and junior college, I was president of the freshman class and vice president of the economic class. I was well on my way, so I thought. I always thought I was going to wind up in who's who, but here I am in AA. I guess that's where I needed to be. Um, I joined American Express in I believe it was 1976, and I told myself in 4 or 5 years I'd be, moving up the ladder. I came in as a customer service rep, and then I became a supervisor for the South and Central and Indian pac countries for South America. I used to travel to Panama and come back with some goodies. Um, I got married in 1972. We moved from the Bronx to Miami. Bought our first house in June of 74, I believe it was, and sold it in September. Made $6,000 profit. Bought it for 18, sold it for 24. Before I go any further, I need to make a statement. My former wife is on the meeting right now, and she direct texts me and asked me if it's okay for her to be on. But you know what? It's okay. Uh, I love that, because I can be who I am today. One of my biggest problems was always I was always pretending to be something I wasn't. I was always the opposite of our 11 tradition. I was always promoting myself, thinking I was better than who I was. Always designer clothes, or outwardly appearances. Always impressing everybody, with what I thought I had or didn't have or how much I knew. See, I'm from the Bronx and I'm a smart dude. You give me enough information, I'll figure anything out. That was my perception. So in April of 1985, I walked out on my family, my wife and my daughter and my son. A couple of months before that, I had gotten a first DWI in May of 1984. And it was like $1,000. Jeffrey Glass, the attorney, got me off, no problems. Safe drive for the whole 10 yards. And I started getting, there was literature being left on the table at the house. Am I an alcoholic? And answer these questions. And as I said, my former wife is on here, and she started bringing that information to the house, to the table. Eventually, she even brought a big book. I looked at it, I opened the big book, and as she was cooking dinner, and as soon as she turned around to serve the dinner, I took the big book and threw it in the garbage. I apologize for that today. To AA, and I guess to my former. So that's what started the merry-go-round, the indications or insinuations that I had a drinking problem. I didn't have a drinking problem. I could hold my boot. I mean, I just consumed a little bit more than the next person, but I was okay. I figured we had a home, 2 cars in the driveway, the American family, a boy and a girl, and in my eyes, everything was fine. But I guess she wasn't contented with what I was providing. So I walked out on them in April. I said to myself, here you go, I'll leave. I'll show her that she can't survive without me and how great I am, So that was in April of 85. And I proceeded to, I also left my job at American Express, quit my job at American Express because they weren't doing for me what they needed to do for me. They had a period where I think it was called Black Friday or something like that. They let go about 400 people, and I was one of the fortunate ones that they just demoted me from a supervisor back to a service representative. But I was disappointed with that, and I walked out on them. I told them where they can take the job and what they can do with it. So I walked out on American Express, and I walked out on my family, and I moved in with my brother in Boca. Boca from where we lived in Lauderhill was about 12 miles. And so I packed up my cars one evening about, must have been about 10 or 11 o'clock at night. I stuffed everything I could in it. And I'm driving on I-95 heading north. And I hit Deerfield, and it was like a truck stop there. And I pulled over, and because I was a little drunk, yeah, right. I was drunk, and a trooper stopped by and said, what's the matter? What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be stopped here. I said, I just come up from the Keys. Now, the Keys were like about 140 miles down the road. I'm coming up from the Keys, and I was tired, and I just thought I'd shut my eyes for a couple of minutes. I'm just going up to Boca. He goes, well, you need to get going. So I proceeded to go up to Boca. I got to my brother's house, his condo. So he lived on the second floor. The doors was locked. So I climbed up the balcony in the back and sat on the balcony. This was around midnight. And about 2 or 3 in the morning, I needed to relieve myself. And so I was trying to tap on the window, and I didn't want to disturb him, but the sliding glass door was open. So I opened the door and I went in. And that's where my drinking and drugging took effect. Now there's a little bit of drugs in there's quite a bit of drug in in my story on my journey through AA. I'll try to keep as light as I can. I used to be a pharmaceutical distributor from my house. I used to keep like 5 pounds of that weed stuff in the attic, and some of that white powder and some pills and some other stuff that I would distribute to supplement my income while I was living at my home with my children. And at one time, my house was broken into, and they didn't get very much because I didn't keep everything in sight. But nevertheless, I was living in Boca with my younger brother. He was my drinking and drugging buddy, and I was off to the races. I was having a great time. There was two clubs that I used to visit or frequent. It's the Holiday Inn in the east and the Holiday Inn on the west. They were all right off Glades Road in Boca. And I remember that I used to get all dressed up, and go to my drinking episodes. Let me back up a little bit. Let me explain the bow tie situation. In 1984, as I mentioned, I had a DWI, and my former wife Carol, who's on, suggested that I get dressed up, put on my suit. I used to have 3-piece suits, a vest, the whole 10 yards, and this bow tie. And I went to my what I was expecting to be dinner, and it was a gratitude dinner for Al-Anon. I walked in, it was like 12 round tables, and people were sitting on the table, and this person in the podium said, can we have a moment of silence followed by a serenity prayer? I jumped up, I said, what? And I went out the doors. There was a set of double doors, and outside the double doors, there was a bar. And everybody that came out of the double doors, I invited them to join me in a drink, and I'd be glad to pay for all the drinks, But somehow nobody did. Nobody joined me. Came back to, I moved to Boca, and I'm living with my younger brother, drinking and drugging. And I was always, as I said, I was always promoting myself. I had these cards made up, they had a little Playboy bunny logo on the top, the bunny head with the 2 ears, and photographer for Playboy. And my phone number is 1-800-YOU-WISH. To be honest, I didn't even own a camera. My brother had a tripod and a box camera that I didn't even know how to use. But I would pass these cards around in expectation to receive some rewards from it, which never did transpire. So moving right along, in September of 1986, my former wife decides to serve me with divorce papers. I was devastated. How can she do this to me? Why would she want to divorce me? And so my drinking just went, downhill. I was like drinking like crazy. I used to drink Johnny Walker Black, Johnny Walker Red, Chevy's Regal, but now at this juncture in my life, I was drinking this rum from Albertsons. It's like wood rum. It was like $5.99 a gallon. That thing tasted like hell, but I was drinking that. That's what I could afford then. So I drank and I drank and I drug and I drank and I drug. I even picked up one girl one evening coming back from dropping my kids off, and we proceeded to drink and drug and do some other of that powder and that's I believe that was the time I had my heart attack. I felt like we were indulging in some sexual activities, and my chest was pounding. I felt like it was bouncing out of my chest. So we went down to the pool, stock naked, swam a little bit, came back up, and I proceeded to go to work the next day. It was like a Tuesday. And I went to work, and I couldn't breathe. I had chest pains. And so I told, I was working with AT&T or Bell South at the time. And I told them I had a problem breathing. And so I told them I was going to go to the doctors. And I went to this medical clinic. I walked in, they take me in, they lay me down on a table, they take my blood pressure, and they examine me. And all of a sudden, the firemen are there, EMCs, and and I asked the doctor, what's going on? He says, you're having a heart attack. I have to send you to the hospital. I says, why don't you call the Army and the Navy? I mean, come on. I can drive myself to the hospital. It's only like 4 miles away. He goes, no, I can't let you do that. So they take me to University Hospital, um, and I have a heart attack. The doctor comes in and sees me. I'm in ICU for 3 days. He says to me, Henry, you had so much fluid in your lungs that they put pressure on your heart, and that's what gave you a heart attack. I says, come on, doc, come on, make something better than that. You can tell me I got AIDS or something, you know? Don't tell me this BS about water in my lungs. I would have drowned. I would have been dead. What are you talking about? So I spent 3 days up in ICU. My former wife came up to visit and see me. They said, you have a visitor? I said, I don't want to see her. So she still came up. She saw me. And they put me down in a room. In the room that I was in was, I had another roommate. And my roommate who was there was the manager of the Dow House. The Dow House was a strip joint in Pompano. And he was the manager. And a couple of his girls came in with a big book. And in the center of the big book was an ounce of cocaine, that white powder. And then my nephew came to visit me while I was in the hospital next to this guy. And the guy says to my nephew, to my nephew, Mike, what are you doing here? He goes, I'm here visiting my uncle. They knew each other because Mike was one of the big dealers. So moving on from that, I'm in the hospital on a heart monitor and indulging in that white powder. I get out of the hospital 3 days later, and I said to myself, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to stop. I can't keep going on like this. So on my way out, I went to Albertsons, which was like maybe about a mile down the road before when I left the hospital. I bought grapes, bananas, apples, pears, oranges, all sorts of fruits. I was going to be, I was going to watch myself. I was going to behave. I was going to be good. That lasted about 24 hours. I was right back to where I was when I left, before I got to the hospital. So I was off from work for 6 months. The doctors, kept calling me, telling me to come in for a checkup. And I would call them. I tell them I got a flat tire. I can't get there. I don't have any money. I don't have any gas. 1,001 excuses not to show up so he can see me. So he wouldn't know that I was drinking. And then my company, Belsouth, called me and told me, Henry, you've been out of work for 6 months now. You have to come to work. If you don't show up back to work, we're going to let you go. This was March of '87. So I went to work, and this brings us to my last blackout. I was working. I had a couple of friends there, and in between lunch and work, we did several other substance. So my friend was going out of town for 3 days. He was an outside salesman. He was going out of town. He asked me to watch his house and to watch his dog while he was away. He lived in Coral Springs, which is about 4 miles from where my former wife lived and my children. So I said, okay, fine, no problem. I can do that for you from Wednesday to Saturday or Friday when you get back. However, that night took a crazy turn. Again, across the street to Albertsons, bought one of those styrofoam coolers, bought some beer, and proceeded to go see my ex-wife or my former wife. All this while, I had been calling and ordering pizza and doing all sorts of crazy stuff at her house. Because when we got divorced, we split everything 50-50. She got the inside of the house, I got the outside. So I was going around the house, doing things. There was cars in the driveway, and I let airs out of the tires. I would order pizza. I was just doing crazy nonsense, childish things. But that night, March 31st, 1987, that was my last blackout. And a lot of it I don't remember. A lot of it, my son, Jason, I believe he was 10 years old at the time, told me everything that I had done. I was driving on people's lawns. I was driving around a little park there through the swing sets. Driving around a pond, in my car. They started about 10 o'clock at night, and I was causing havoc throughout the whole neighborhood. And the police were called, and they were trying to catch me. But my house was the first house built in the whole neighborhood, and I knew every road back. I can cut through people's lawns and go to another street and dead ends and all this kind of stuff. So I evaded them from 10:30 to about midnight. Now it's 12:05, and it's April 1st, April Fool's Day, and I'm coming out of a blackout, and I'm driving down the road, and I see all these cop cars, all these lights down the end of the road where my house, former wife's house was. And I said to myself, man, I should stop over there. I should stop and see what's going on. Maybe they need my help. There's probably something going on. So I'm driving I'm serious, about 5 miles an hour, 7 miles an hour down the road. And I get to my former wife's house, and the cops are there. There's 3 cop cars, and the whole neighborhood is out. And the cops come over to my car, and they shine the light in the back of the car. They asked me to get out of the car. They said, look, what are all these rocks doing in the back of your car? Are you a rock star? And I said to them, no, I'm an archaeologist. See, I had been throwing rocks at my ex-wife's house all that while. And I could hear it. I could hear her in the background. Look at you. You don't even know what to say. You can't even talk. When the hell are you going to stop doing this to yourself? That statement, when are you going to stop doing to yourself? It's like a little light bulb went off in the top of my mind. I mean, it was just like a little glimpse that I had something to do with all this insanity. God forbid, it wasn't me. Now, come on, you did this. You made me do all this stuff. So I got arrested. I got handcuffed. My car was towed away. I got locked up for 4 days. While I'm in jail for 4 days, she comes to visit. I said, here she is. I know she was coming. She come to apologize to me for what she did to me. And no, she came to serve me with a restraining order. I wasn't allowed around in the house anymore. So my brother bailed me out, and this was a Wednesday night, April Fool's Day. I spent 4 days in jail. He bailed me out on Sunday, and I drove me back up to Boca from Lauderhill. And of course, I kept on drinking. What else can I do? I would go across the street to Publix, and the girl says that to me. Do you ever buy anything else besides beer and cigarettes? Don't you buy food? And I felt like saying, none of your business what I buy, as long as I'm paying for it, but I didn't. I just kept my mouth shut, bought my cigarettes, bought my beer, and went up to my room and started drinking. Now, this is when life changes for me. That was April 5th, 1987. April 6th, 1987, and I had no plans. I had no idea what was going to transpire. I believe I had a life intervention, which was spiritual in nature, because that day, April 6th, drunk, I got in my car and I drove to my very first AA meeting. I had never been north of Glades Road on Power Line, and I drove up to Advent Lutheran Church, Dixie Highway, and I attended my very first AA meeting. I used to say I was half drunk, but I was never half drunk. That's a bunch of bull. I walked in half hour late, drunk, and I was miserable. I was lonely. I was hopeless, and I just went to see what it's all about. So, like I said, I was late, so I didn't introduce myself or anything like that. I leave the meeting, and this man follows me out of the meeting. He soon became my sponsor. His name was Dennis Orr. Dennis was a gangster from Chicago. He had a club up there that Art Connie and Jackie Gleason and the Pack Rack, those Sammy Davis Jr., Van Sinatra, and those guys, D. Martin, would hang out at his club after hours. He would lock up the club and they would party there. And so he followed me out, and he gave me a big book. I'm trying to reach for it. This is the big book that Dennis gave me. And he put his phone number in it. And this is his number. Dennis is his phone number. I don't think you guys can see that, but he put his phone number in there and he gave me the book. He says, Henry, I can't help you to get sober, but I can take you to get help. Now, this gentleman had 25 years sober, and he tells me he can't help me to get sober. And in the back of my mind, I'm saying, what the hell do I need you for then? You know, why are you talking to me if you can't help me get sober? He says to me, don't drink, don't think, and go to meetings. At that time, I thought those were the first three steps he was, referring to. But he taught me my very first three lessons in Alcoholics Anonymous. He taught me honesty when he said he couldn't help me, but he could take me where he goes to get help. And he taught me trust. He says, go home tonight, come back, and don't drink. And he taught me hope. He gave me hope. You know, the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I wanted to do that. You know, he was a complete stranger I didn't know from Adam, was willing to trust me, willing to allow me to be me and come back and not lie. You know, and I said to myself, this guy's an idiot. And all I got to do is have a couple of beers and come back, a little mouthwash, a little gum, a little mint or something. He'll never know that I was drinking. But I went home that night and I didn't drink. He says to me, I want you to come back tomorrow and meet me at this place, Benmar. He says it's a recovery center. I said, oh, that's why he's going to take me to get help. He's going to take me to some professionals, some medical doctors who are going to show me how to get sober. You know, I didn't want to stop drinking. I just want to learn how to drink like a gentleman. I want to control my drinking. My problem was that I consumed too much alcohol. So we go to Benmar. I meet him there about a quarter to 7. Meeting started at 7, and we sit down. And they ask, is anybody here for the first time? This is anybody's first AA meeting. I wasn't about to raise my hand because I wasn't an alcoholic. You know, an alcoholic, to me, the stigma of an alcoholic was someone who walked around with a brown bag, didn't have a place to rest on, didn't have a home, didn't have a job, didn't have money in his pocket. And I had all that stuff, so I wasn't an alcoholic. So the meeting went on, and at the end of the meeting, he said, does anybody want to pick up a white chip? I sure as hell didn't want to do that because they said, if pick up a white chip and surrender. You know, surrender to me was giving up material things, you know, your bank account, your car keys, you know, that's what surrender was to me. I didn't know it was a spiritual surrender, but he looked at me and he nudged me. Now, I didn't want to make him feel bad because he was a real nice guy. So I went up there and I picked up my first white chip, April 7th, 1987. And I haven't found it necessary to pick up a drink since. It took me like about 60 days, close to 60 days, to finally raise my hand and admit that I was an alcoholic. You know, all this while, now, mind you, I came into AA on April 7th, 1987. And by April 21st, 2 weeks later, the guy's got me going to the big book. He's got me up to step 3 already. You know, he's not telling me to, he's showing me, he's underlining, he's highlighting, he's showing me in the big book, steps 1, 2, and 3, you know? And because he had asked me to read. And I came back, oh, my bow tie's falling off. I came back and he said, what did you read? I said, I read the first page where it says Bill Wilson was in Plattsburgh, New York. I had attended high school up in Plattsburgh, New York. And it was a Catholic parochial school, and that's all I told him. So that's why he took me into the book. I says, Dennis, I'm not an alcoholic, you know. I mean, I don't, you know, alcohol, it's a liquid. I'm not powerless over a liquid. I can throw a bottle up against the wall, smash it, watch that liquid run down the wall. I'm not an alcoholic. I just consume too much, you know. I just want to learn how to drink like a gentleman. So he proceeds to take me into the big book. He shows me the doctor's opinion. He says, we have a disease. It's a physical, mental, and spiritual disease. Okay, all right. A disease I can handle. I can buy into that. I have a disease, you know. So if I have a disease, there must be a cure. So he proceeds to take me into, like I said, into the big book. Dennis was a true alcoholic. Dennis didn't know anything about drugs. Dennis was all big book, nothing more. You know, he got sober. As a matter of fact, he got sober in April of 61. He went back out one time, had a slip, came back in June of 61. And he died sober in 2017 with 56 years sobriety. I love him dearly, you know, and he was patient with me. He was loving, he was caring. And the reason why I say my name, my problem is Henry is because as he went through the big book, he circled and he underlined, you know, the root of our problems is selfishness, you know, and our problems are of our own making. Once we became alcoholic, crushed by self-imposed crisis, he underlined all these things. And that's where I came to the realization that I'm the problem. It's not my former wife. It's not my employers. It's not my children. It's me. I'm the problem. Okay, so I have a problem. And, you know, he helped me to understand that. And then he took me to step two. In step two, I had a problem with step two. Came to believe that a power greater, came to believe. You know, believing has to be something concrete for me, something tangible, you know, came to believe. I must be from Missouri. Show me, you know. And he says to me, look, Henry, our second tradition talks about a loving God, you know, and you can't see God, but you can feel God. He says, when the wind blows against you, what is that? You know, and he says, that's God, you know, God's presence. So he taught me how to love God, you know, and accept God. See, I had a punishing God up to this point. Like I said, I went to a private school up in Plattsburgh, New York, and the bell will go off at 5:30 in the morning. We get on our knees, we say our prayers, we jump into the shower. Then we go downstairs to chapel. We say prayers. After the chapel, we go down to breakfast. We say prayers. After breakfast, we go to study hall. We say prayers. After study hall, we go to class. We open up the class with prayer. It was prayer, 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 prayer. It was discipline all day long, in and out, up and down. I was so fed up with this praying routine that when I went to college in Beaumont, Texas, I joined the Jewish fraternity because I was sick and tired of this prayer stuff. I was sick and tired of this God, a God, you know, that was always punishing me. Well, I was in the Catholic school. These God's representative, the monks there, I mean, they would smack me across the head. They would throw books at me, and you know, I was a saint. I don't know why they picked on me, but so I had a punishing God, and so he proceeded to take me through the steps, and then came up the fourth step. He says to me, I want to meet with you next week, and we'll do the fourth step. I said, okay. So we met the following week. He says to me, you ready to do the fourth step? I says, yeah. He says, where is it? I says, it's in my, I have it written, I have it up here. He says, no, if the book says put it on paper, you know, down on paper, write it down. Now, see, I didn't want to do a fourth step because I read up ahead, and I knew if I did a fourth step, I had to do a fifth step. So I didn't want to do that. I postponed it. I kept putting it off. I told him that I had it written down, and it was in my jeans, and I did the wash, and it got all washed up. So I have to write another one. And, you know, it was one excuse after another. He finally got tired. He says, Henry, listen, stop telling me what you're going to do. Tell me what you've done. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I guess we didn't talk for a couple of days. And I put off the fourth step until February of 1988. February 1988, this gentleman, Ben T, who just passed away not too long ago, and his wife, Kathy, were putting on a retreat. It was a Came to Believe retreat. And I attended that, my first AA retreat. And since that retreat, I've always attended an AA retreat for the next 24 years. I did 2 retreats a year because of that introduction. So I did my fourth and fifth step with the speaker. That was Tom Mosley. Tom was from Little Rock, Arkansas. Hell, I never been to Little Rock, Arkansas. And I could tell this man anything I wanted to tell him because nobody in Little Rock, Arkansas knows me. And there's no way that's going to get back to these people here in Boca. So I proceeded to tell him, do my fourth and fifth step with him. And the thing that came out of that fourth and fifth step was that the shame and guilt that I carried since I was in high school. At that boarding school, all male boarding school, I had a sexual encounter with another male student. And I carry that weight, that shame, and that burden with me from age of 16 till I was 37 for 21 years. And I never told anybody that, you know. And and then I mentioned it to Dennis that's what was keeping me from doing the fifth step with him and the fourth step with him, and we shared and we talked about it, and as time passed on, I started sharing about that at meetings, but I only shared about it with men at men's meeting. Still a shame. I still wouldn't share in a mixed meeting. And so that's what I did for many years until I finally realized that the spiritual principles of honesty, and that's when I started sharing my experience of that nature in mixed meetings, and that was really like a relief. I mean, that was like a gift, to share that. I think it says on page 143, our deepest, darkest in God's hands is the answer to another human being's problem. As I shared that in the men's meetings, guys came up to me, asked me to sponsor them because they had encountered similar situations, and that's what happened. Six and seven, step six to me was, willing to change, the willingness, those defects of character, these shortcomings. Seven was like, and my sponsor told me, six is very simple. He says, Henry, God will remove all these things if you stop doing them. So I stopped taking things that didn't belong to me. I stopped stealing. I stopped lying. I stopped deceiving myself about myself and setting myself up for failure and disappointment. I tried to the best of my ability to tell the truth. And that's what I did. And, it's like smoking cigarettes. I used to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day. And I stopped that. God removed that obsession. God removed the obsession of drinking from me. I want to back up a little bit, and I should have mentioned that sooner, but when I had 90 days sober, I returned to my former wife's house. I used to have my children Wednesdays and weekends. And on Wednesday night, I would pick them up and take them out to dinner and go to either to the library or to the department store, and we would study and eat and study. But this Wednesday night, as I returned back to my former wife's house, I had my big book and my 90-day chip with me, and she answers the door and she says, "Why don't you come on in? Go and buy some food, and we can have dinner as a family." I said, "Damn, back in. I'm on the good side now." So I go out to Kentucky Fried Chicken, buy a bucket of chicken, potatoes, and biscuits, and the whole 10 yards. And I come back, and sure enough, there's a Ford car in front of the driveway, sitting there, big white Ford. And I rung the doorbell, and my son answers. He says, "Dad, that's her boyfriend." I said, "What?" He says, "Yeah, that's her boyfriend." So I leave the food there, and I get in my car, and I start driving back up to Boca. Now, it's about 7 o'clock at night, and in Florida, out of nowhere, storms come up. It was dark. It was raining. It was storming. I mean, lightning. I mean, the weather was just the way I felt inside, tormented, distrust. And I'm driving back up to Boca in the middle of the storm, and I go to my meeting where my sponsor would be on a Wednesday night, and I see him sitting in the front. Back then, the rooms were filled with smoke, So I walked in, I saw him over in the front, I waved to him, and I waved like this, and I just left the meeting, and I went back to my room. And I'm on my room, and I'm kneeling down in my room, pitch black, and I say, "God help me. God help me." My eyes are closed. And all of a sudden, I feel this warmth. I feel this light. My whole room was illuminated. I felt like I was elevated. And I'm in peace. I'm at rest because my whole world was just shattered. But I feel this comfort over me. And I think I'm up close to the ceiling, and I say, God, I'm going to open my eyes. Let me see you. I opened my eyes. The room was still pitch black, and I was still on my knees, you know. And see, 17 years prior to this, that same girl, the girlfriend, my former wife, who was my girlfriend at that time, decided to leave me for someone else. At that time, what I did was one of these romantic uh, move. I drank iodine, trying to poison myself, trying to kill myself. My kid brother rushed me to the hospital. And my parents bought me a 1970, brand new 1970 Cutlass Supreme. That was going to comfort me. That was going to do for me uh, what I needed, provide for me what I needed. But here we are 20 years later, and I'm in the same scenario. And this time, I don't try to kill myself. This time, I ask God for help. I ask Him into my life. I invite Him in, and the whole thing was just tremendous. It was just totally different. Um, and that was one of the spiritual experiences that I had, other than when I walked into AA. It's on April, and the obsession was relieved from me. I don't know how that transpired. I lived with my younger brother for my first 3 years, and every single day I come home from work, there was booze in the cabinets, there was beer in the refrigerator, there was that white powder hanging around, there was those roaches in the ashtrays. All that stuff was there, but I had no desire. I had no, I hadn't even thought of indulging in any of that nonsense. And I know that was God working for me in my life. Fast forwarding oh my goodness, I had a lot of ups and downs in my life. In 19, I had 5 years sober. My daughter, my princess, my love, was arrested for armed robbery and sentenced to 5 years in prison. And I was devastated. But again, I didn't find it necessary to pick up a drink. In 2007, um, June of 2007, I decided to take my dad to Dominican Republic, where we were from, and to the little town where he was born, the Bani, where the little kids bathe in the creeks and in the rivers and all that stuff. And I went there and I met his cousins, his uncle, his brothers, and his aunts, and we had a great time. And this was in June of 2007. He came back in September 2007. He had a heart attack, was in the hospital. He had a blood clot. They cut open a piece of his leg to something to do with the arteries and stuff like that. And he told me at that time he was going to quit working because he wanted to retire. He was 83 years old. He was still working. My dad was a workaholic. He worked 7 days a week, and he was incredible. I know he wasn't an alcoholic. You know why? Because he drank Guinness Stout. That tasted like hell. Man, I don't know how the hell he ever finished one of those. I guess that's why. But he was a workaholic, and he in November of 2007, on November 6th, my son was purchasing a home up in Georgia, and I drove up with him, and because he lost his license because of his own doing. So I drove him up there, and on November 7th, about 2:30 in the morning, I'm driving back on I-75, and I looked to the side of the road, and I said on the railing, it's pitch black. I said, Jay, did you see that gentleman sitting on the side of the road there with white pants and a blue jacket on? See, those are the uniforms that they had in Boca Hospital. He says, no. I says, are you kidding me? So, I continued to drive back down, and my brother calls me that night, the next morning, about 6:30 in the morning. He said, Dad passed away last night at 2:00 in the morning. I shared that with my sponsor, that I had a vision that I saw my dad. And he says to me, yeah, that's God. That's God allowing you to say goodbye to your father. And I accepted that, and those are the things that happen. Um, this program is incredible. There's so many stories that I can tell you about the miracles in my life, the journey that I've been through, the joy that I received. and the fellowship and the love. There's one guy I want to mention. His name is Frank D'Onofrio. He was one of my sponsees, and he used to have a place up in LJ, Georgia, and we went there with my sponsor and my sponsor, his wife Ruth, and Frank and his wife Noreen, and Joe, just Joe, who was Frankie's childhood friends, who met Frankie in AA down here in Florida several years later, and we all three went up there. Well, I mean, all six of us went up there to LJ, Georgia, and we used to get up at, believe it or not, we used to get up at 6:30 in the morning, and we would read. And one of the things that we would read was a 24-hour book. My sponsor was not familiar with a 24-hour book. Like I said, he was strictly big book, big book, big book, big book. And we would just have a great time. One day we were driving down to go into a meeting about 8 o'clock at night. And Frankie's wife, Doreen, says to Frankie, "Wow, it's pouring out. I wonder where does the reindeers go? I wonder what they do." And Frankie, he was a funny guy. He says, "Hon, they love the rain. What do you think they call them, reindeers?" That's his humor. That was Frankie's humor. I'm going to close up. I know I'm running out of time. Maybe I can come back and finish the rest of my 20 years in AA. I'm going to close with the something I want to read out of page on the 12 and 12. On the bottom of page 104, it says, "We discovered that we do receive guidance for our lives to just about the extent that we stop making demands upon God to give us on order and on terms. Almost any experienced AA will tell you how his affairs have taken remarkable and unexpected turns for the better as he tries to improve his conscious contact with God. He will also report that out of every season of grief or suffering, when the hand of God seems heavy or even unjust, new lessons for living were learned, new resources of courage were uncovered, and that finally, inescapably, the conviction came that God does move in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform." And but you guys believe it or not, I'm one of those wonders. And if anybody is disappointed or didn't hear anything they wanted to hear tonight, you can email Steve and Todd for a refund. Love you guys. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak, and thank you for listening.